Hello, everybody. Welcome and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Arthur's Roundtable. Big shout out to McGenna for introducing us to Jeff. And Jeff Hoffman is with us today. And I'm looking forward to our discussion. Grateful for you to be here, Jeff.
No, thank you so much for the invite.
You're very welcome. Can we start at the beginning? Tell us about your journey and then we can go from there.
Sure. My quote entrepreneurial journey, I say that with the air quotes because I never even knew that word
Right.
and never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. What I thought of myself it was a problem solver. There's always a problem, right? But I was always pretty determined to figure out a solution. I just didn't know that that was the definition of entrepreneurship. And for me, the attitude of entrepreneurship, and I always tell people it's not a job, it's more of a mindset of solving problems and making things better. But it didn't start with business. It started I grew up in the Arizona desert. We had a single mom who had, 4 kids, 3 jobs, and I played every sport. And when the season changes, you need new equipment. And when your mom's already busting her butt, you don't wanna ask her for more money for stuff that's not really a necessity. Football cleats, right? So I would go out and find any job I could do for anyone to make money. Anything that was where somebody be willing to pay me for, and so that I could just buy stuff I needed without bothering my mom. But I also started to realize that people only pay you if you're creating value for them. And I say that because even now, Arthur, people pitch me products and I was like, who's going to buy this and why would anyone pay for it? And they're like, well, we'll see. And I
Yeah,
sit there and think, you're not doing something that has value to other people that they would pay you to do. You're doing something you think is a good idea or cool. But so I understood that if I'm not creating value, I'm not getting paid in the world. But that's what started it. And then when I went off to college, I went to a school that we couldn't afford. And when I got there, they sent me home, only I had no money to get home because they said, you haven't paid. I said, well, we've paid everything we have. And they said, well, there's a gap. You can't go to class without paying the rest of the bill. So what
Berkshire office, right?
Yeah, that's where I was, yeah. And he's like, "Sorry." And I'm not really mad at him because it's not like I can go to steakhouse, eat, and then tell them I have no money.
Right,
That ain't
exactly.
right. And so he's like, "You have to pay the rest of your bill to be a student here." And so I didn't go home. I went to the basement under the college because I wasn't sure it was legal and started a little company and just funded my entire college running a company in the basement. So that's sort of always been the attitude. If you want something, there's a way to get there, but you're not going to, if it's money that you need, the only way to get paid for things is to create value for other people. Something they'd say, yeah, I'd pay you to do that. Anyway, so that was the start. I got a software engineering degree. I got a corporate job right out of college, hated it, quit, and I've been doing startups ever since then.
Do you think that the people who are, as you described them, people that create something and say they will come are the ones that are trying to jump on the coattails of like the dot-com boom and just do something because they think somebody's going to throw money at them, independent of
Okay,
them creating value?
so here's the problem, there's way too much of that. So the answer is yes. I see so many people, like you said, that are the coattails of the bandwagon. There were so many things that people just jumped in and gave it a shot. And, let me put it to you this way, because this is a big learning and something I share with entrepreneurs all the time. Most people well, let me put it to you, even back up. I was doing a TV show with some founders and CEOs, and the host said, it was like a panel. She said, "What's the first thing you do when you have a new idea?" And all of them said, "I get my team and I go to the whiteboard." They go in their conference room. And I said, "I get my keys and I go to the parking lot." Now I'm going to explain why. And they're like, "Wait, what?" Most people design their business from the conference room out. Where do you work? In your office. Where do you design stuff? On the whiteboard in my office. Then what? I push a product or an MVP out into the world and hope people like it. But I never did it that way. I learned a lesson the hard way with my first startup that I'm out of the office way more than in it. When you're out in the world, that's where all the problems are. So you should design your business from the customer in, not from the office out. So the reason I gave that answer was as soon as I have an idea, I try to figure out who do you think is going to be the customer? Who would pay for that? And I immediately go to them and spend a ton of time. talking about it before I ever build an MVP, create a company or anything. And if nobody but me thinks it's an idea worth paying for, that idea is done. And if I'm out there and people say, by the way, the mistake a lot of people make is, I love your idea. I'd do that just until they see the price.
Right.
We have to tell people it's not a business until you find out if they're willing to pay you what it takes to make it a business, not just do they like it. Anyway, that's what I always do. I go straight out to the market and say, help me design this because it's for you. And so many people are not doing that. We're seeing it again in AI, right? Before it was internet companies, now it's AI companies. Everyone's just launching something. And I asked them, what business owner is this for? Problem does that business have? How are you solving it? And how much is it worth paying? And they're like, I don't know. I just got this really cool AI. So I think we're going to see a lot of AI companies go nowhere
Yeah, there's
because,
going to be carnage on the side of the
yep,
road
yep,
for sure. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times that people don't start with the end in mind. The whole idea, and it's true like in life. If you don't go out and mix into the populace, you're just making speculation based on your life experience, which could be right.
it could be.
Yeah, but it's more likely that things change and evolve faster than what you've experienced them to be, right? So it's really,
Exactly.
yeah, it's really interesting. So what happened after you quit your job and then decided to do what?
So the thing that got me into entrepreneurship again um, was never now. You know what I get now, Arthur? People call me and they say, "Hey Jeff, I wanted to talk to you. I'm an entrepreneur now." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And they say, "Well, I quit my job." I say, "Okay, go on." And they're like, "I got a little office. I got a website, right? I registered a name, and I got new business cards, whatever." And I'm like, "You have everything but like a purpose,
Right.
right? A problem to solve." And so they think that the being an entrepreneur and having a startup is the point. The point is not. It should be starting from the problem. So I'm going to give you my example of how I learned that. Now I quit that job, so I'm unemployed with no income, right? 20 something years old. But I just couldn't do for me, it was a DNA thing. I couldn't work in that environment anymore. Mm, I went to an airport with what little money I had to bought a ticket to go talk to a potential mentor. And back then you had to wait in line to a ticket agent to get your boarding pass.
Hmm.
And the lines, it was a Friday afternoon, were more than an hour long, and I missed my flight. And I was standing there very frustrated. And because when you get to the front, the person looks at your ID, verifies that it's you, and then just hits print on the boarding pass and hands you a piece of paper, which is a boarding card, and it comes out of a printer. And I was like, oh my God, I've been in this line almost an hour and a half for you to print something. And she's like, next customer. And I'm like, well, why can't I just print it myself? It's a printer. And she said, it doesn't work that way. And people in line behind me, travelers, were saying, yeah, move on. It doesn't work that way. And I'm standing there. I said, well, it doesn't work that way because you're all just accepting this. "Oh, excuse me. Sorry."
All right. No problem.
So I went home and I said, like, I'm never going to miss a flight again. There has to be a better way. And took out a pencil and started sketching a kiosk. In the same way, I don't have to go in the bank anymore because they have an ATM. Why can't that work here? So, when you go to the airport now, all those self-service check-in kiosks, that was our first invention, our first product. So we created a kiosk that you could walk up to in the airport and check yourself in. And that business was successful. Kiosks are, pretty much every airport in the world these days. But the interesting thing, lesson learned, was here I am trying to build this kiosk and make it work. And a friend of mine comes by and he goes, hey, he said, I told a friend what you're building and he wants to give you some funding because you're going to need manufacturing. And I said, oh, that's great. I'm really focused because the kiosk doesn't work yet. And I said, you know what? Take the money. And he said, okay, well, I would, but there's a problem. And I said, what? And I'm like, busy, right? And he said, Jeff, you don't have a bank account. And I said, well, just go get me a bank account and take the money. But do you mind? I'm trying to build this kiosk. And he goes, I would, but there's another problem. And I said, what? And he goes, you don't even have a company.
Mm.
And I said, okay, fine. Go create a company, get a bank account, whatever, but just leave me alone. I'm trying to build a kiosk. The focus, I think the reason we were successful is all our focus was on solving the problem. having a startup and being an entrepreneur, that's a layer of stuff you need wrapped around you. I do need a company. I do have to hire people. I do need a bank account where I can take funding. But none of that stuff, all that to me was noise compared to solving the problem. And so that's what I look at when I look up startups and founders today. When people come in and they're more focused on their logo and their website and the fact that they're entrepreneurs, everything should be about the problem I'm solving and the way I'm solving it. And a company is just a thing you need to have to deliver your solution to the world. I learned that the hard way while I was out there because I didn't have a company and I didn't care. I had to have that. So focus all in on the problem itself, not all the trimmings.
Yeah, and all the trimmings are easy now too. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
really easy now.
super easy. Yeah.
Even writing the code,
Yeah.
which we had to do it all by hand back then, and now you got all these code generators and stuff.
So what do you think, how did this evolve into a business for you? Is it being an angel investor? Is it advising people? Is it both?
You mean what we do now?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because, continuing on to build startups, and some work, some didn't. I was a part of a couple teams that we built very successful startups, Priceline.com, Booking.com, Ubid.com. And then I left tech for a little bit and created some startups in the entertainment space in music, film, and television. And we were blessed that way more of our companies that we launched worked than didn't work. And so I had kind of made the commitment, kind of a giving back thing, where I said, all the things we learned. Again, I'm not an educator, a teacher, a consultant, any of those things, right? I'm an operator, and I'm not a finance guy per se. I'm a marketing person, really, is the part that I'm best at. But I was like, we were successful because we learned a set of specific skills called entrepreneurship, right? We learned the fundamental blocking and tackling of being a good entrepreneur and founder. And so I had said at that point, I want to share that with as many people as I can. The times I was frustrated, Arthur, and when I was failing, and I would say, come on, man, somebody has already done this and could have told me the decision I just made was stupid. Don't turn left here. The bridge is out. Right. Why can't someone tell me that? So later I said, I'm going to try to give back by advising and telling people everything that I've learned. And when you start advising companies, so I was mentoring entrepreneurs and advising companies, being on boards and stuff. And when you start to do that, that is where you see the deal flow, right? And some of them you come across and you're like, oh my gosh, not only going to advise these people, but I need a piece of this. So the advising and mentoring led to a lot of the investment opportunities when we saw something amazing out there. Having a bad allergy day, I guess.
Take your time. No worries. Yeah. So the putting yourself out there as an advisor or a mentor naturally morphed into some companies that you would just say, forget it, or help, or say, I need part of this.
Yes, exactly. I started to get a lot of deal flow. They typically weren't calling me, maybe half. Half were calling for looking for funding, but a lot of times they weren't even intending to ask me. They called and said, I don't know, like me, I was an engineer. And so they would say, I have no idea how to package this company properly for an investor. What do investors want to see? What do they care about? What are their triggers? How do I get them to say yes? So because I was prepping companies to do that, like I said, I'm like, wait a minute, I would say yes to this one
Right.
uh, while I'm helping them. So, yes, advising and mentoring companies and preparing them to be investment ready created a great deal flow because all these people were calling me and I was seeing all these opportunities kind of before the rest of the market did.
Yeah. I found that, we see a lot of deal flow, and it's part of the business construct for one of my companies. And I'm just, for 30 years, have been a private investor, more or less. And we see tons of deal flow, but it's been my experience that by the time I see it, and I will say I've seen some stuff that at the very beginning that I've invested in also that I think are winners, but more of it's not so interesting to me.
I totally agree. a large percentage of it.
Yeah, I mean, just metrics like we get 200 applicants a month, and half of them go away because it's just a dumb idea, right? I mean, it's pretty obviously not a good idea. And we do have some experience in looking at these things, so it's not without some sort of learnings along the way. But I I haven't found that most people, even though they need it badly, are willing to engage someone to help them write the deck and do the models, and they just think they can limp along and do it themselves, and it's usually a disaster.
Completely agree. They don't know what they need, then they don't know they need the help, or they think they're doing it fine.
Yeah.
I think that's much more the norm than the exception. So I agree with you. And I see a lot of stuff that either, like I said, isn't solving a real problem with a value equation, meaning that even if people like it, I don't know how they're going to make money. Or, they might have good ideas, but it's a mess. It's not packaged in a way the world can understand what the business model is and how they're going to go to market. So, yeah, I see that all the time. Luckily, we have, I happen to be the chairman of a nonprofit called the Global Entrepreneurship Network, which has a mission statement to help anyone anywhere launch and scale a company. So we created this to teach entrepreneurship and to build entrepreneurial ecosystems. And we're currently on the ground in 200 countries. But the reason I still get an abnormal deal flow, Arthur, is that we created something called the Entrepreneurship World Cup. I just posted on my social media about it. Um, it's a Shark Tank. It's a pitch competition, but because we're in 200 countries, this pitch competition is across all 200 countries. So, like last year, I think we had 36,000 startups in 191 countries enter our competition. So we held pitch competitions because we're on the ground in 100 countries. And at the end of the year, 36,000 startups wound up with 100 winners. And we took the 100 best companies, we flew them all to one country, and then I always judge the finals. So we've been doing this 6 years. In 6 years, we've had a total, this is crazy, 420,000 startups around the world have entered our competition. So deal flow is one thing I never run out of.
Yeah.
It's because we run this Entrepreneurship World Cup and I see startups all over the planet. So while you're right that the few, it's a low percentage of companies that know what they need and will engage, but because our universe is so big, that small percentage is still a hell of a lot of companies for us.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never don't have a full plate.
So, we don't need to talk about it now, but I'd be curious. I think I get emails from your organization, but I could be wrong. Like I get lots.
Probably. It would make sense that you have someone like you would be on our list.
Yeah.
We have we built something called the Global Business Angels Network. And so we include in our network business angels and investors all over the planet.
And so, like I said, we don't have to get into this, but how does an enterprise like that stay alive? Like, where's the funding come from?
We have unbelievable donors. If you look, I won't go through and bore you now, but it's all on the website. But our primary donor for many years has been the Kaufman Foundation, which is
Out
the
of New York.
world's largest
Yeah.
foundation. It's the world's largest foundation for entrepreneurship. So they're one of our primary donors, but we have a lot of unbelievable partners now, from people like DoorDash to Amazon to KKR, even to Wells Fargo. All these are companies that love the work we do, and they all put money into this nonprofit. So we have a
Nice.
strong list of partners. Now we have a deal with Alibaba. So we've been very blessed in
Yeah.
that because we have delivered impact, we have a lot of donors that are happy to keep funding what we're doing.
Nice. Yeah, I'd like to know more about that at some point. Super interesting.
Absolutely.
So, what's the what if you were to be asked what's important to you right now, is it primarily mentoring companies to help them get squared away, focused outside of that organization, for example?
Yeah, it's obviously that organization as chairman is a big piece of my life,
Yeah.
especially again since we're in 200 countries. So that takes a big chunk of my time. But Yeah, that's kind of split, like I said before, into the two pieces, advising and mentoring. So advising is literally companies, that will call and say, "We please join our board and help us scale this thing." So I do a lot of advising, but the mentoring part tends to be much more to the individual. So when I'm mentoring, if it's you, Arthur, I don't really care what company. You might switch companies halfway through our relationship and start something else. So I'm mentoring you, helping you become a better leader, better CEO, and a better entrepreneur. So it's teaching you the skill sets you need, whereas advising is much more company oriented. But I'm splitting my time between those two things, advising companies and mentoring entrepreneurs, and they're equally important to me. And it's also the way that I keep learning. The more I'm out there in all these companies, the more I know what's working in the business world, what's not. I gotta keep, I gotta get my hands dirty to stay informed. Otherwise, I would just fall behind too fast.
Do you think, by the way, when we did these things in person, our pitch things
Uh-huh.
for Family Office Insights, we would do 2 or 3 a week in New York City at a midtown conference room at a law firm, put 30 family offices in the room, and someone would pitch one company or fund. And what invariably happened, whatever they pay, we charge to do that. We don't get any participation on a success fee or shares or anything like that. We just never went down that road. But whatever they paid us was exponentially returned first if they got money. But even if they didn't, which sometimes they didn't, they would learn more from the rich, smart people in the room. It was worth
For
every penny
sure.
they paid for us, right? And
Absolutely.
what you just said is, and I got to sit in that room every day and learn from that. I mean, it was a unbelievable lessons, at bleeding edge stuff, let's just say. Yeah. It
Yep,
was
that is exactly why I love doing this. And I like you were talking about, we get to hear it from both sides. I'm hearing from founders and learning from them building their companies. And then on the investor side and the family office side, right? I'm listening to them. So I agree with you. There's you just never sometimes people say to me, "How come you haven't just retired?" And I'm like, "Because every day there's still something more to learn." So
yeah. I've
there's
I've
so
gotten
much out there that I don't know, and I love the learning.
I've been retired for 30 years. I mean, it's just I don't know why I would stop doing this,
Yep.
right? Is what's the point, right? What am I gonna do? I'm gonna golf 6 times a week, right? Whatever, yeah. So, I have a question about how things have changed. So, for example, you have to have your thing packaged up in a way so somebody can recognize its value. Let's just say that, right? Exponentially harder, I think, I'd love to hear what you think, uh, to get people's attention, even though the internet and reach is ubiquitous in some ways, but
Yep,
there's more noise than signal. And so people have
absolutely.
a really hard time. We're every day trying to figure out how to deliver signal rather than noise and get to the people. But and there's lots of crap and there's lots of fake stuff and just go down the list. How do you advise people to do their best to make sure their message gets across, aside from being packaged up properly?
Are you talking about, like, on the company side, the founders?
Yes.
Yeah, so you and I completely agree on this. Most of them actually suck at it. I look at so much messaging, they're like, "We're not hitting our sales goals." And I'm like, first of all, you have the wrong message, and second, you're telling it to the wrong people.
Yeah,
So,
right.
not shocking that you're not getting there
Yeah.
because your message isn't doing what you thought, and a lot, and those aren't that person you delivered that message to, that marketing channel was never gonna buy your product.
And they didn't
So
care. Yeah.
yeah. So that is way more the rule, right, than the exception. So part of in this advising and, we more of it might be bleed over into strategic consulting. We frequently have to start with companies. In fact, it's interesting that family offices and, just funds, a lot of times it's the fund or a PE firm will call me and say, "We've invested in this company and we're not convinced that they know how to scale it. So, will you go get them positioned?" So, the strategic positioning is the part where we really sit down and say, "What is it we're trying to sell here? And so therefore, what message do we have to deliver? How do we create that message? How do we deliver it, and who do we deliver it to? So the front end of repositioning companies so that they are delivering the correct message, that winds up happening so often for us. And by the way, that's one of me personally. That's kind of one of my favorite parts is that strategic positioning. Where are you going to fit in the market, and how are you going to deliver that message, and who's going to hear it? But yeah, people are bad at it. It's it's funny. I always tell people this: when you ask a startup that failed, what happened? You know what they say? Well, we ran out of money. And I always tell them, no, you didn't run out of money, right? You ran out of sales
Hmm.
because if you had marketed and messaged your product right, money would be coming in.
Yeah, your sales would fund your growth. Yeah, yeah,
So when
totally.
they say we ran out of money, I was like, now you ran out of good positioning, good marketing, good messaging. Because if you got all that right, you'd be making money right now. Unless, of course, your product is just not a winner, but they always blame it on that. The reason that they ran out of money is because no investors will give them any more because they have no sales. And
Right.
I was like, right. So the problem isn't that you ran out of money and the investors won't give you more. It's that you're not selling your product. So you need to be looking at why that is happening.
Is it
And like
that
I said, like we said at the beginning, it's frequently because you said the wrong thing to the wrong people at the wrong time.
and
We're
what you
never
said at
going
the
to get
beginning was get in your car and drive to the customer and say, "Will you eat this dog food?"
yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, that's what we always do. I can't tell you how many times when we've taken on that advisory thing, I've gone to their customer and I'm like, they're like, who are you? You're talking to me more than the actual company, right? And I'll go out there and say, why'd you even call them, right? Why'd you sign up for this in the first place? What did you need? What were you hoping to get? What other companies do you look at? So a lot of times we'll come back and say, the reason you think your customer bought your product isn't even the reason they bought it. You're solving for the wrong variable. They don't even care about that. So again, I shouldn't be the one if you should have known that, but that's the reality. Most of the time they don't. I have to say this a lot, Arthur. I have to tell, you know, proud management and CEOs and founders, I have to tell them, quit being blinded by your own brilliance because you think your idea is great and you think you're really smart and you're actually never as smart as you thought you were. And by definition, you're never smarter than the customer.
That's true.
If they don't buy your product, you got nothing anyway.
Yeah. It's look, there's I give some people a pass if they're overwhelmed and understaffed, but then what's your priority, right?
Yeah,
You're not talking to the customer, then it's just like if you have a big company and you're not talking to the guy that's drilling the oil well and
right.
having him let you know that that thing you just bought is not working
Exactly.
and it's
Person
causing
actually doing the
doing
work.
the work, then you're missing the whole thing, which is why, a lot of these bigger companies have flatter management organizations now because the bad news gets to the top, right?
Yep,
It's not the US military. You gotta talk to people, right? Find out what's
absolutely.
really going on. I mean, it's at a whole different level, but arguably one of the reasons why Elon can do so much or seemingly does so much is because he had people that can pick up the phone and call him and say, "This isn't gonna work," right?
Yep, absolutely agree. By the way, that was a really interesting part about Bezos too. Jeff really allowed his teams to have autonomy and empowerment. So all the different departmental and functional teams of building Amazon, Bezos let them go, and the too tightly controlled CEO that is calling all the shots and not listening to their team doesn't get there.
Yeah.
I can tell you that one of my favorite parts about Priceline and that made it work is we even have, we had people that were 24 years old without a lot of business experience, but they were just brilliant. And so we would go to the 24-year-olds at our company and we would say, what do you think of this? What are we missing? You with a totally different upbringing and perspective than us. How would you approach this problem? So I liked that we engaged a lot of different people in our own company to gain as much diversity in decision making as possible. And I don't think we would have succeeded without all those people combining ideas and then synthesizing that into a final solution.
Well, Priceline was one of the early companies that demonstrated that you could actually sell shit on the internet.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That was the hard part, by the way, because people never bought something from their computer. They'd always bought from a person. So our big challenge was way less technology and way more marketing to gain consumer trust.
Trust.
Yeah, hard problem, but it was a fun challenge.
Yeah, I bet. How long were you there?
I don't know. I think from the beginning, probably 5 years total.
Yeah.
Remember back then, things happened at internet speed. We started designing that company in 97, launched it in 98, and went public in 99. So the bulk of the important part all happened in 3 years.
Yeah.
And then
That's
a
wild.
couple years later, we had a solid business model and a public company, and it was cruising along.
Yeah. Who ultimately acquired that?
Nobody, it just the IPO became a public company and still is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Priceline acquired over the years a bunch of other companies, but no one ever acquired Priceline. So now it's about 5 companies, 6 companies, I think, all under one parent company. But Priceline was the acquirer, not the acquired.
Got it. So if it's interesting to you, are you interested in speaking to more people and helping them out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how I learn, and that's how you keep engaged in the world, so your business brain doesn't atrophy.
Yeah.
So very much so.
Yeah. So is the best way for people on the call to reach out to you is LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is, yeah, but my email also is super easy. It's jeff@jeffhoffman.com.
Yeah, that couldn't be
Spelled the
easier.
way you see it in the window. So jeff@jeffhoffman.com, but the place I am the most online is LinkedIn. However, there's a million Jeff Hoffmans. So if you type Jeff Hoffman Priceline, it goes right to mine.
Yeah, that's a good hint. So let's wrap up, but let's have you back with McGenna. You want to do that?
Okay, yeah, let's do that. I would
Yeah.
enjoy that.
Yeah. And we've done two with her because she's got a great story, as you
She
know.
does, yes.
Yeah.
I
And
obviously am a big fan.
yeah, me too. And so I'm Greek, she's Albanian. We might as well be the same.
Yeah, I see your Bavelas, so love it.
Yeah. So super grateful for her making this introduction. I know you need to
Yes,
run.
thank you.
Yeah. Jeff, thank you.
All
Really
right, my
appreciate
friend, let's do it again.
Yeah. And thank you everybody for joining today.